joined by producer, actor, writer, and filmmaker Ryan Willard. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me, Sophia. How's it going?
Good. So I know you started acting at a very young age. Can you talk about that and how you got started in the industry?
Sure. So I was kind of born into it. My mom hosted Good Morning Manila when I was a baby. And at 1 year old, I was in a Johnson's and Johnson's baby powder commercial back in the Philippines. And then I moved here to the States. And when I was 7, I was friends with the principal of my elementary school. And he actually recommended that I audition for something that he saw in the newspaper for a movie called We Sing in Sillyville. And it was this kids sing-along movie. And I basically went to it and I sang the song Down, Down, Baby, Down by the Roller Coaster. And I ended up getting the part. And that was kind of like a really impactful moment in my life because I came from a big family and I wasn't spoiled at all. But suddenly being a 7-year-old star of a movie, I just got to kind of run amok, get all the attention. Any food I wanted would just magically appear. It was amazing. And so that's really how I caught the acting bug. And when I was on set, I really just looked around and was like, oh, this is where I want to be. I love this. And so ever since then, I've been kind of chasing that enjoyment from being at a workplace. Cause at 7 years old, you don't really understand that it's a job, but in reality, it's just my happy place. And so basically I acted on and off kind of all throughout until college. I took a break from acting and I studied political science while interning at MTV News and production. And so I got the opportunity suddenly to be behind the camera. And as I was exploring the producing side, I realized that I really, really loved it. And I got to learn under some really amazing people at MTV News who were giving me way more responsibility than an intern might have anywhere else. So I really got to get my hands dirty and I really got to just see and learn a lot. And then I was offered a job in production after that at VH1, which was part of MTV Viacom. And I started working in production for about 2 years. And then I basically realized I wanted to leave production to go back into acting and filmmaking and making my own stuff. So I basically left, kind of rolled the dice, and all my coworkers said I was crazy. And I just didn't think I could do anything else. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't give my dreams a chance. So I went at it full force, and that's how I kind of got into the world that you see me in now.
Cool. And I saw that you did something with Nickelodeon. Can you talk about that?
I did, yeah. So when I got back into acting as an adult, I was lucky enough to get representation and a manager and an agent. And as I was going through that, I had only landed like a supporting work in like a Best Buy commercial. And I was really fortunate that I had this one agent. Her name is Barbara Coleman. She works at Innovative and has repped me from since then, essentially. And she was sitting in her office with another agent, and this other agent was like, do you by chance know anyone who's like a camp counselor, big brother type, good at improvisation, good with kids? And my agent was like, it's Ryan Willard. And she was like, oh, that's a good idea. And so they submitted me and I went to it and did it. And weirdly enough, through the audition process, I just kept kind of like getting further and further. And in my final audition at Nickelodeon, there was 2 guys, 2 girls, and they were looking for a guy and a girl. And basically the guy that I was up against was the guy that I was in the Best Buy commercial with. And he was the star of the commercial and I was the supporting. And I knew that he was this guy who just shows up and he books. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was super nervous and we started kind of going against each other and they were mixing and matching us with the boys and the girls. And then eventually they put him and I together in the room. And in my mind, I was like, oh man, we're going head to head right now. But I think this guy is super funny and he's super nice. So we started riffing together in the room and our chemistry just kind of popped. And they eventually asked everyone to leave and kept him and I again. And we read together one more time. And we ended up getting cast together. And so I got to be a host on Nickelodeon for 2 years. And I hosted a show called Slime Across America, Slime Ball, Nonstop 5 at 5. I got to do the Orange Carpet at Kids' Choice Awards and do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I was watching some of the clips of that. I feel like I remember watching it, but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance for sure. It
Yeah.
was really, really, really fun time. And it was a dream come true because I had grown up watching Nickelodeon more than I did Disney Channel. So the opportunity to do something that you've looked on with fondness for so long was super exciting. And I got to learn a lot. And I still use a lot of those skills that I learned there at Nickelodeon.
Hmm. And you're like a professional MC, right? Like a live MC?
I am. Yeah. So basically, Nickelodeon was the very first time that I was a professional host. I'd been hosting my family events kind of my whole life. Not my whole life, but really since like high school. But I have a huge family and we have big events, and they've always had an MC kind of doing that. And so I was used to being in front of people and hosting. And my mom, as I told you, hosted Good Morning Manila. My dad in the Philippines is also a very natural host. So it was kind of in my blood. But when I got to do it on Nickelodeon, I was recognized as a host and really got to like hone my chops. And so when you're working in television, it's a much crazier grind than people realize, because when you see one single shot of someone talking to camera being like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Ryan, and this is Slime Across America. Today we're going to the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium." And like you have to do, say, a page of copy. That's like the script. But you have to do it so many times and you have to do it fast. And so when I was on Nickelodeon, I kind of got my chops up with my natural talent and really got my muscle memory down to just read the copy and move and talk fast and get all of the information in there. And then I also had an opportunity to do a lot of live stuff, which I actually loved. And I had the luxury of them hiring a separate coach. Her name is Barbara Barna Abel. And she was coaching us to do live events for Nickelodeon. So I'd done live events. I got training and really just honed that craft. And so when I left Nickelodeon in 2009, I knew I loved hosting, and that was kind of ingrained in me. And I was lucky enough to fall into something with my theater company that I hosted a live late night talk show called The Not Too Late Show that I produced and directed and hosted. And then I was really randomly fortunate to have Susan Sarandon and the owners of a ping pong club here in New York called Spin come to a show. They liked what they saw, and I'd been going into Spin as like a guest, and she basically invited me to host a charity event for her and host their Friday night tournament one night. And so I did that as a kind of test. And then I ended up hosting the charity event, and she really liked what I did at the charity event, and I raised a lot of money for her. And that's a whole other story. But then I got this job hosting a ping pong show every Friday night. So I got to continue doing the live stuff. And I love ping pong, also known as table tennis. And that really got me kind of ingrained in the table tennis world and slowly got me creeping in. And different organizations started picking up on me and who I was and what I did. And they started to realize, oh, we should bring in Ryan to do the professional table tennis events. So simultaneously of doing all that stuff, I was getting a lot of calls to do charity events. And then I figured out I was an auctioneer as well. This is a whole other side job that I do randomly. And so I was just kind of getting calls constantly. And I always had a place that people could see me hosting live. And for me, when people see me do what I do, they have a much better understanding and have an easier time. They're like, you should host our event. But if you just tell them like, oh, Ryan's a great host, they don't really see it, you know? So I was really lucky to have a place to be doing it, and just kind of kept building it up and being open to anything. And charity events were definitely something that I loved doing. So I got a lot of exposure through that. And it's just been kind of what I've always gone back to. It's easy, fun, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, all those things really like come together and can help you with acting and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah. It's interesting because they're very different sides of myself. Like when I act, it's a definitely a different hat that I put on.
Mm,
But my acting skills definitely feed into my hosting skills. And my hosting skills can feed into my acting skills at times, but really it's more the actor hat that I'm wearing secretly while I host. Because I've found it's a kind of a unique talent and skill. Most actors I know, when they see me host, they're like, dude, I could never do that. How do you do that, bro? And I see how they find these characters. I'm like, how do you do that? And so we just try and exchange tips. But yeah, they definitely kind of feed into each other in different regards.
mm. Yeah, I've been, doing a bunch of interviews and, like, kind of hosted not really my own show, but kind of, like, hosting my show, so
Yeah.
I've definitely picked up some things to work like, I've been working on getting better at talking and just, like, getting on the you know what I mean?
Yeah. It takes a while too, like it doesn't happen overnight. You got to put in a lot of hours. And like, I think along the way, you start learning these different tips that you can kind of take what works for you and what doesn't. And it's also like acting because there's no right way to do it. You have to kind of live your life and pick up anything you can and see what works for you. And like one of the tips that I got very early on was when you talk to camera, if you're hosting, substituting the camera for a person. And so like my acting style is kind of a Stanislavski light version, I would say, but I use substitutions. So if I'm in a scene acting with someone, I substitute in my mind an equivalent relationship with my scene partner, right? And so when I'm hosting, whoever the camera is or whoever the audience is, I try and zero in on one single person that I'm talking to. And suddenly that can change your tone. So when I was auditioning for Nickelodeon, the way I'm talking right now was very different from the way I talked to the camera then, because I was specifically talking to my 7-year-old sister. And so the people watching were just like, oh God, it's like he's talking to a kid. How does he do this? And it really, I was just using my acting skills and I was just talking to my sister. Um, but it's definitely a journey to do that. And I think you're way ahead of the game being a junior in high school and already doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Um, so how did that all funnel into the production side and getting into short films and stuff?
Into the production
Short
side.
film production.
Um, that's actually a great question. So from my time in MTV, that really was when I got my production chops, right? And I got the confidence to know that, like, okay, I can produce. And I got up to associate producer before I left to pursue acting again. So it was always kind of something that I did on the side. So any project that I was involved with, I was producing to some extent, even if I didn't get the credit. Because to me, producing is really getting the job done under any circumstances. And there's a lot of different types of producers because it's a really vague title, right? It could be a vanity title. It could be someone who's there from day one. But I always found myself just wanting to help and being willing to make anything happen. So like, I found myself still doing it constantly, that when I was ready to transition into being the filmmaker myself, I had a whole Rolodex of contacts and people that I'd been working with for years and that I knew and that were willing to help me because I had been kind of producing without even asking anything from them, just helping them. So by the time I made Quantum, I kind of just called in every favor possible. And even though I produced on that film, I didn't take a credit because one of my best friends from my theater company was my producer, and he really took the brunt of the work. But I still, was silently calling in all these favors of people that I'd known throughout the years, and even asking people who weren't specifically doing that job professionally, asking if they'd be willing to take a chance and do a short film and try something that they haven't done before.
So that leads me into my next question. Can you talk about Quantum and just the whole experience with that?
Sure. So that was hands down one of the best experiences of my life for multiple reasons. And with that film in particular, I'd been told for a very long time, because I'd been since Nickelodeon. When I was on Nickelodeon, I started writing because I realized that people that looked like me weren't getting lead roles in films. And I started writing and really honing my craft secretly and just writing, writing, writing. And in between Nickelodeon and Quantum, I'd written multiple scripts, and so many people had said to me, like, dude, you got to write a short. Just write a short. Just do it. And I was like, why write a short when you could just make a feature? And it wasn't until I was in a film called Cul-de-sac with the Fuzzy Logic crew, and I saw that premiere at TIFF, and I was blown away that I was a part of this short film. It was really the first awesome short film I was ever a part of. But I saw their structure and their format, and suddenly this idea that I'd had in my head, I realized that I could tell that story by just telling a slice of the story versus the whole thing. So I got the inspiration from there, and I found some music to just really kind of get my mind in that place. And I wrote it in, I think, 2 nights it was like a Friday and a Saturday night. Really between the hours of 11 and 5 a.m. I just was sitting there writing and crying and getting all emotional and going through all the things and pacing around. But I really felt like I had a story that had to be told. And once I took that script, I took it to one producer who was a friend of mine, and his response was not necessarily what I wanted to hear. He had very different ideas for what the film should be. And the second person I brought it to was and that first person, I didn't ask him to produce. I was just like, just take a look at this. Tell me what you think. And he thought there should be a car chase in it, thought there needed to be bigger stakes and all these crazy things. And I was like, no, it's not about that. I want it to be contained. That way we can all shoot it in just one location and keep it very intimate. And then I brought it to my producer, Joe Mullen, and he read it and just called me immediately and said, when are we making this? We have to make this now. And so I was very, very fortunate to have someone in my corner from day one who said, we're going to make this film. I don't care how we have to do it. And from there, it just kind of started slowly snowballing. And I just was very strategic about how I wanted to get it done. I knew I was going to crowdfund, and I hadn't crowdfunded anything at that point because I was saving up my favors to ask for people. And so I really pushed the crowdfunding and was very strategic with how I crowdfunded. And that's a whole other conversation if you ever want to have that too. And as I started that journey and process, I just started sharing with people and seeing how they reacted, looking for some feedback, but knowing I had the script as I wanted it. And the more people I shared it with, the more people were just like, well, this is amazing. You have to make it. You just have to make it. And so that determination inside me was just reinforced by people who weren't necessarily just sycophants who were just saying it just to, compliment me. I sent it to my toughest critics and the people that would normally say no. And it just started growing where when I would ask people to be a part of it, a lot of times before it even asked them, they would ask, how can I help? And that was due in part to the relationships I'd cultivated for years, and them connecting with the story as well. And so I was really lucky that throughout the whole journey, so many people kind of came out of the woodwork to help in unexpected ways. And it just kind of unfolded miraculously. I mean, making any film takes a series of miracles. And I did the best strategic planning I possibly could, but it was also just some insane luck. And like one of the things that I did was I planned the shoot to be on my birthday, right? Because like the house that we shot in was the house across the street from where I grew up. And I lucked out because my neighbors from across the street happened to be moving that year. And so they're like, you can absolutely use it. You should totally use it before we move. We're moving in like July. It's open in March. And so we like looked at the dates. I chose the date that worked best for everyone was my birthday weekend. And they're like, no, but you want to like celebrate your birthday, don't you? You don't want to work. And I was like, no, that's like exactly what I want to do on my birthday is make a film. Like, of course I do. And they're like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, please. Um, and then suddenly I used it as an excuse to throw a birthday party for myself. And I just called it the most elaborate birthday party possible. And so any favor I needed to call, I was like, well, it's my birthday. On that day we're shooting. So if you want to, I don't know, come by and hang out. And so that was kind of the joke, but I also got to celebrate my birthday doing exactly what I loved. And the family that was nice enough to give us their house, the Hartmans, were just so incredibly kind and generous and offered to let us sleep there. They let us have the place with no location fee. And they said, we're not even taking a cleaning fee. We're just taking care of it. We just want to support you and believe in you. So I was incredibly fortunate to have so many amazing people on all levels, offering to help because they knew how much it meant to me and how much I cared about it and how passionate I was. And they liked the script, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. Everything just like came together.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I could go on forever about how some of the pieces came together, and it doesn't even make sense, where when I tell people, they're like, what, how is that even possible? Like, for instance, I knew the little girl was the hardest thing to find. And I knew she would make or break the film without question. And I said that from day one. I was like, we got to find this fire girl. It's all going to revolve around her. Who we cast will revolve around finding that girl. And the first person I went to for casting was my sister's NYU first roommate, like her first roommate in college is a casting director, and she does independent stuff. So I called her, and Allison Twardziak is a brilliant casting director, but I basically said, Al, I need you to find these kids. Ideally, I want them to look like me because I want to play the kid. But if we can't find those kids, I'll take anybody. And she was like, okay. And she was nice enough to be like, look, I'm not going to charge you because you're family. I'm going to do this favor, but this is the one favor I'll do for you. But you have to run the session yourself. So I'm going to set everything up, get you all your appointments, but you have to run it yourself. And because I had worked in casting random times, I knew how to do that stuff. And on the first day, the second person we saw was Helena James. And she walked into the room and read that scene, the most emotional scene in the bedroom with Quark. And literally the people in the room just lost our breath. We just all just, and I just leaned in and I was like, I'm just going to give you some direction. We're going to read it again, try it again, just to see how you take that. Let's do it. She did it, did even better. And I was just like, okay, you can just step out now. We're okay. Thank you. And she walks out and I was like, are you kidding me? Like if that is the girl that we found and that's the second person we saw, if anyone is better than that, we are golden. But I don't think anyone could be because that was perfect. So she was like the first person where we just knew she was the one. And then I think it was day 2 we met Noah, or maybe it was day 1. But my producer was like, I'm really excited about this kid. He looks just like you. And I was like, really? You think he does? And right before he came in, I looked at his resume and he had a dope resume. Like Noah had been in the Peanuts film. He'd also been in, what was the other one? Monsters University. And so he'd done a lot of voiceover work. And he was Filipino. And apparently he looked like me, but he came in red and just blew us away. So we found the kids. I'm pretty sure we found them both on day 1, and we matched them up and we looked at their pictures and we were like, they could easily play brother and sisters. Like this could be perfect. So that was one of those moments that just kind of fell in my lap. And I thought that would be the most difficult thing. And yet it was kind of one of the easiest. Or another example is my editing, right? Editors are hands down so incredibly important, and yet no one really thinks about how important editing is. And finding a good editor is incredibly tough. And I happen to have a family friend. His name was Andrew Garland, and he was a sophomore at NYU. And I basically was like, I can't really afford an editor, but I can sit down and work with you and tell you exactly what I want, how I want it. But I need someone who's just ready to grind with me. And he stepped up, didn't even have a full degree or education, and just ripped it. And I've suddenly found myself working with someone who was faster than any editor I've ever worked with, because he's incredibly computer savvy and smart. And suddenly we were making the film, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're like a real editor, and you're a sophomore in a sophomore in college right now. This is insane. So all these pieces just kept coming at me from the very beginning to the very end. And I was incredibly fortunate the way it all played out.
Wow, that's some real movie magic, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you really hit all of my questions.
Well, cool. I'll see you later. Bye.
Let's see. And can you talk about the score with Darren? How do you say his last name?
Oh my God. Darren Moores.
Yeah.
Man, I love that guy. Scores and so music in film is one of my favorite components of the medium. And I'm a huge fan of Darren. So one, the fact that I got to work with him was because I brought on Bear as a producer as well, and Bear hooked that up and made that possible. But for me, music is a huge part of my process. So anytime I write, I use music to write scenes. And so there's this very specific moment when I hear a song. If I have a story in my mind and I hear a song that connects to that story, it just like hits me and I'm frozen. And suddenly I go to that place in my mind. And so music is almost my gateway into certain scenes, right? So I get very attached to music because I create playlists where each scene has a different song. And anytime I want to go to that scene and run the scene in my head over and over and change things and just live it out, I use that song and I just play it. So with Quantum in particular, there's a song by M83 called Outro, which you've definitely heard because it's been in tons of commercials. It's been in tons of things, but it was from the Interstellar soundtrack. And that song really is what wrote the emotional core of Quantum for me. And it's a really big piece. It's a beautiful song. And I essentially was kind of nervous because I'd known that you don't want to get attached to music as a filmmaker because you're never going to get that piece, right? You can't really afford to license it. And even if you can, you're going to blow your whole budget on it. And so when Bear floated the idea, they're like, maybe we can get Darren. I think we can get Darren. I was just like blown away because his work on Curfew, Cul-de-sac, all of Sean's films and the Fuzzy Logic Boys films, I couldn't believe that was even a possibility. And he read the scripts, connected with it, and was like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. And I was incredibly excited. And I sent him that music and the examples of what I was using as my temp songs, but also what the inspiration was. And he was so collaborative, so open, and just so nice to work with someone like me, who was a first-time filmmaker at that point, that I got to go to his studio in Brooklyn, which was in his apartment, and I got to like watch him actually do it. So he would create pieces, and then he would then invite me over, and I would just sit there and listen to it and give him my feedback, give him some notes, and then he would just make changes in real time. So I got to like watch each piece happening while watching the film and seeing it all kind of come together. And I think he crushed it. I really do, because when I listen to that score, I don't even think about the M83 song anymore. And he didn't copy it. He didn't do anything other than use it as inspiration and create something totally different, totally fresh, just hitting the emotional beats that I was looking for. And he brought even more to it than any temp track that I found or would have wanted to license.
Yeah, the music was like, it really transports the whole film, honestly.
Thank you. I'm so glad you say that, because it was so important to me, especially with the emotional points of it, right?
Mhm.
And like how it punches in, and I wanted it to sweep you just into that emotional journey. But like the one big moment that I was like dead set on was when the credits hit and she says, there's a warm one in the oven. I wanted to snap to black to the title Quantum, and I just wanted that music just to pop, where you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love the ending. That was so cool.
Thank you. And the way he scored that, it was like perfect. Like when I first heard it, I was just like, oh God, yes, 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 that's it. And then we put it over the film, and I was just like, you did it. Like, I don't know how you did it, but you just did it.
I have so many questions. Like I have so many questions just about Quantum, but
Fire them off, whatever you want.
I see that Mr. Cullen just said, "How's acting on Bear's film, The Helping Hand?" So I guess we can get into.
Oh my gosh.
So first of all, how did you talked a little bit about this already, but how did you meet Bear and how was working with him on different projects?
How did my bromance with Bear begin, is what you're asking? So I met Bear through my friend Sean Christensen. And Sean, as you know, directed Curfew and a bunch of other films. But basically, I was in a scene study class with Sean, with this amazing teacher named Alice Spivak. God rest her soul. She just passed away 2 weeks ago. But she was an amazing acting teacher and mentor, and she is truly one of the reasons I am where I am today. She's the only acting teacher I fully studied with here in New York in my adult life. And she just had this penchant for attracting and bringing together and nurturing amazing talent. And there was this group of us in this class that we all were studying together on a Thursday night. And I, mind you, studied with her for 15 years. But for a couple of those years, there was this pocket where there was this core group that this core group would eventually become some of my closest friends. But they were just so amazing and just like such a high level of talent that I felt like I was the baby of all of them, and that I couldn't even hang with these people. And Sean was someone that our friend Chrissy and Mara brought in to the class. And so I met Sean, not really knowing who he was, just thinking he's a nice guy, good actor. And little did I know he was training for Curfew. And not long after that, he left and shot Curfew. And then I think it was in 2015 when it won the Oscars, or was it 13 or 14? 14. No, 13. It was a long time ago, but I just remember sitting there watching the Academy Awards. I was like, I can't believe Sean is like nominated right now. Like, this is insane. It's like one of my friends is nominated for, oh my God. Oh, I freaked out, like lost my dang mind. And essentially I was already a fan of his, but that just like brought it to a whole new level. And so his follow-up film was called Cul-de-sac. And I got a call from one of my friends, and he basically asked if I would be interested in being an extra in one of Sean's films. And I was like, yeah, of course I would. And so he connected me with Brendan Hubbard, AKA Bear, the producer. And my friends and I basically took a car up to upstate New York to go to the location we were shooting at. And all we knew is that we were going to like a dinner party and that we were playing guests at the dinner party. And so I remember right when we got out of the car, or when we were driving up, we created different characters, because we knew if we're extras, we would want to be playing around with each other and having backstories, even if we were extras. And I got out of the car and I got to meet Bear. He was the first one that I met on set. He was just standing outside waiting to greet us, brought us in. And Bear always has a pretty epic beard, and it was just super nice, but super quiet. And that particular set was one of the best sets I've ever been on. And Damon Russell was directing, Sean was writing, producing, and acting, and Bear was producing. And I remember being on the set and kind of looking around and just taking it all in to be like, this is magic. There's no script. It's one of the calmest, most chill sets. And I remember looking at Bear and seeing how he was working, and just really being like, I got to work with that guy because he's doing something right. And if you have a film set that's calm, cool, collected, and everyone is at ease, in my opinion, you get the best work. And so we all played around, didn't know what we were doing. And then suddenly Sean's telling us that we're going to be in different scenes. And suddenly we had bigger roles than we knew we were going to have. And so I didn't really know what the film was until I saw it. And then when I went up to TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival, that's where I really got to like bond with Bear on a different level. Just because, you know, it's like the victory lap, and we got to hang out there and talk and just dissect everything and kind of chop it up. And I knew that I wanted to work with him. I just didn't know when. And so when Quantum came up, he was one of the first people that I called to be like, hey man, I got to just throw stuff at you. I know you got a lot on your plate, but what do you think? And so Bear through Quantum was like my lifeline. Like he was the guy that I would call late at night and just be like, dude, I don't know what to do. What do you do at this point? And he would just very patiently talk me through everything. And I'm so lucky because he was already accomplished and doing so much, but yet he just took the time to be not only professional, but kind and not talk down to me and just talk me through and help me in any way he could. So he was really one of my lifelines throughout that. And I just really appreciated him so much, that when we wrapped Quantum, he was our festival producer and kind of took the reins on that. And then not long after that, he was like, hey, I'm making a short film. I think I want you to act in it. I was like, yes. Okay. And he sent me the script. The script was fire. And then he told me he wanted me to fly down to Atlanta to shoot it. And I was like, yeah, sure. And the way that it played out was so bonkers because essentially I was hosting an event on Saturday night and I was hosting it till like midnight. And then I went home, crashed, and then I had to catch the very first flight to Atlanta in the morning. And so I think I left my house at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., hopped 2-hour flight to Atlanta, get to ATL, drive to the suburbs where they were shooting at, took like an hour nap. And then we shot from like 10 something a.m. until like 3 a.m. We shot the entire film in one single day. And this was Bear's directorial debut. And honestly, it makes sense that he could pull it off because he has that calm, chill demeanor. And he had a great team behind him as well. A girl named Darcy, a guy named Damon Russell again. And it was Darcy Trunzo, I believe was her last name. But he had good producers on, and having good producers on make those types of things possible. Like people don't really think about what a producer does or really understand, but if you have good producers who care and go out of their way to give the filmmaker everything they need while still keeping them within the reins of what they can financially do or do within the time limits, it's a really good synergy that can be created. And Bear surrounded himself with great people. They had a great team. And so we were able to make a full-on short film in one day. It was pretty bonkers.
Okay, now can you talk about Safe Space, or what is it called? Safe Space After Class? There's two different names.
It was called Safe Spaces. The distributor of the film changed it to After Class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and what your role in the film was?
Sure. So basically the filmmaker that I'd mentioned that gave me the idea of the pickup shoot and getting that extra shot in the bathroom is a director named Dan Schechter. He was a friend of mine. I met him way, way, way back in the day. Literally like when I was still on Nickelodeon, I met him through my manager, and she at that point was like, Ryan Willard, Dan Schechter, you guys are supposed to know each other. You'll see, you're going to work together. And it wasn't until I was hosting a show at Spin, like 6 years later, that he happened to come by with a friend. And I was like, dude, I know you. You're Dan Schechter. And he was like, oh yeah, Ryan, right? And I was like, yeah. We reconnected. And he invited me to a writer's group that he was doing out of his apartment. And he brought like a really great spectrum of writers, from people who were brand new to people who were seasoned and had made films or were writing in shows. And he just had a really great group. And Dan was a teacher himself, and basically would just have these weekly events. And I'd never gotten to be in a community like that as a writer. So it was really exciting for me, and I really enjoyed it. And so throughout Quantum, he was another one of my lifelines of people that would call and bring things to. And when Quantum finally wrapped and I showed him like the rough cut, he was very impressed. And he was like, wow, that turned out way better than I thought it was going to, which is something that a bunch of people said to me, which I took as a compliment, even though it might not be. He was like, that turned out way better than I was expecting. I was like, that was amazing. And I was like, thanks, man. Like, I really appreciate your help. And a couple weeks later, he asked me out to lunch and asked if I would be interested in producing his feature that he wanted to make. And I had read a draft of the script in the writer's room, and I really connected with it. And so he asked, and I immediately just said, yes, I'll do it. But I've never produced a feature before. Are you sure you want me to produce for you? And he said, yes. Like, if you can make that short film and like do it seamlessly. I know you wore all those hats. You don't even take credit for all the things, but I know you're someone who's a hustler. You'll find a way to make things work. And so I was his day one producer, and we took that from just a script up until what you saw. And my role was, I definitely wore a lot of different hats. And I genuinely believe that in order to make something successful, you have to surround yourself with the best talent you can get. And so I am not someone who likes to carry an ego with him. And I just openly said, we got to get the best people possible. We got to bring on better producers, got to bring on better actors. We got to bring on everything to make the script as good as it can be, because I know I don't know everything. And so we were very fortunate of the way it just all kind of started snapping together. And Dan produced as well on that, even though he would never take a credit on it. But we went from like being a production out of his apartment, and that's where we met and would run everything. And then we started attaching actors, and that was really like what got the ball rolling. And the first actor we attached, I believe, was Fran Drescher. And that was kind of out of left field, but a huge home run, because Fran Drescher is an amazing talent. And simultaneously, we got the script into Justin Long's hands, and Justin read the script, really connected with it. And we got that through one of Dan's friends, was friends with Justin. So we got the script in his hands. He loved it, connected with him. He and Dan sat down and they connected, and suddenly Justin Long wanted to do the movie. We also got like Lynn Cohen and then Richard Schiff. And so we got our cast together, but we didn't actually get into the window when we were supposed to shoot. So we had to pause. And one thing you might learn eventually is that a lot of times when projects pause, that's kind of a death sentence for them. So I genuinely didn't know if it was going to happen. And two other producers that were on the film as well powered through and just kept hammering down on the finances, because we had a potential deal with a film financing company. And this guy named Jordan Kessler came in, and he was kind of a white knight who just had the money with this production company. He had the relationships and was like, all right, we can make this happen. And they made it happen. And that following spring, we went into pre-production. And I was, again, I was under the guise of, if I'm a producer, I will do whatever it takes. And the job that I, in fact, had to take on was that our casting director was, she had cast all the roles she was contracted for, except there was like 80% of the roles still left of all these supporting people. We cast the main actors, but like everybody else you see on screen hadn't been cast yet. And we didn't have the money to pay her to like bring her back on to do a whole other separate set of casting. And so my skills had to come out, and we used her and consulted with her through everything. But I basically cast like a lot of those actors in that film, like the majority of them. Anyone not the main family in that film, I ended up casting. So a lot of people thought I was the casting director, which was kind of awkward, but also at the same time, I'm like, whatever, I'm a producer. Because when I'm producing, when I'm on set, I will be getting coffee for the talent. I will go on a run. I will do literally whatever it takes to make sure that film is getting delivered. And so like when I was on set, I think uh, my biggest strength besides the casting part was just kind of being a magician. Like I was the producer who I didn't necessarily know the answer to every question, but if there was a problem, I would be excited to problem solve. And I had a Rolodex of people I could call, and I was just willing to pick up the phone, talk my way into any room to get anything I needed to get done, and just helping a bit. And there were a lot of other producers and a lot of other people that were contributing. But I just kind of got to use that as my learning experience on a project like that and really just give it everything that I had, knowing that it was going to be a great film.
And what was your experience at Tribeca Film Festival?
Yo, that was a dream come true, first of all. I'd been in Tribeca with Cul-de-sac as an actor, and that was a short, but to have a feature in the Tribeca Film Festival was like wildly exciting. But I'm gonna keep it real with you guys because you're students. I want you to know it's not necessarily what you would expect. And I say that because like Dan was alumni at Tribeca, right? So his first feature film supporting characters did get into Tribeca, did very well, but Dan was in with the Tribeca crowd, right? And like the programmers. And so like literally the week before we shot, we went to the Tribeca launch party for like that year. And we ran into and talked to like the head programmer, right? And so like there's a lot of people that just kind of assume like, oh, you submit and then you get in, which is possible for sure. But there's always all these tiers of people within a festival that have either had a film in there or they're known or their film was somewhere else and it was seen. So there's like a lot of competition to get in to those festivals. And I was very lucky that Dan had those relationships. So we were talking to Tribeca very, very early, earlier than anything I'd ever done before. And so the fact that we got in was to me the most exciting thing ever because I don't really go in with expectations. And even if you have those relationships, you're not guaranteed a spot by any means. But it really, really felt like something that would fit. And it totally did. And I really enjoyed my experience at the Tribeca Film Festival. But to be totally honest, it is so big and spread out around New York that I found myself going to more films and going to more parties the years that I didn't have a film there. Weird as that sounds. But like I found myself through all the film festivals I've been to, like I actually like the smaller festivals, believe it or not, and I meet more people, the smaller festivals, and I make more contacts and I make more relationships and people I want to collaborate with at those smaller festivals than I do the big ones. And so like Tribeca, honestly, I think I got more out of all of the smaller festivals that I went to with Quantum and with other things than I did at Tribeca. I didn't make a lot of new contacts at Tribeca or anything like that, but I did see a lot of people that I knew that I invited to the film, which was great. But it wasn't necessarily nearly as fruitful as like something like Hang On to Your Shorts that I got to go to. And even like a festival like that was so much more intimate that when I did spend time with people, I just so fondly remember those moments that I did spend, whereas Tribeca was such a blur, just of things happening and such fanfare, that I didn't really get to connect with as many filmmakers as I did the different other festivals, the independent ones.
Yeah, Hang On to Your Shorts is definitely, I've gotten a few short films in there too, so
yeah,
it's definitely an experience getting to do those things.
It's the best. I mean, like there's this moment. I have this friend now. His name is Zach. I forget his last name, Abramowitz. But he was in a film called Receding, right? And this is like genuinely one of my favorite moments that I every time I talk to him, I like bring this up just because I'm like, man. But we both were in the same block of films, and we watched each other's films, and we both came up to each other. Me and his director were just like, yo, that film, your film. And we just like had that moment. And so we ended up going from the theater into the after party, the reception for the awards. And we ended up sitting together, and we were just like suddenly friends, and we were just having a great time. And he was talking to Helena and her family. And weirdly enough, I was friends with the director's girlfriend that I knew totally separately, that I met through the Soho International Film Festival, like the year that I was in for Quantum. And so we were just sitting there talking, and Zach won Best Actor in a Comedic Short. And I will never forget this moment. It's one of my favorite moments, seeing this actor who'd been grinding and working for so long. He'd done so many things, but never gotten recognition like this. And to see the look of holy shit in his face, and just like not knowing, and just like, it was just such a pure, brilliant moment. And then seeing him go up there so nervous but excited, and knowing that like, I deserve this, but oh my God. And then going up there and kind of losing his mind as he does. It was amazing. And then I was lucky enough to win an award there too. And so it flipped as well. And so it was like one of those moments where I'm like, I'll be friends with you forever, because we both won awards while sitting next to each other, having never met before. And we were such big fans of each other's work, that to see each other win was such a genuine celebration for each other. And that kind of camaraderie, I don't think it happens at the bigger festivals. And if it does, there's just so many other things happening, that Hang On to Your Shorts will like forever be in my heart.
That's really cool. You have a lot of like inspiring stories.
Oh, really?
And I watched the interview at Tribeca, and you were saying, I don't know if this ended up happening, but you said something about you had a writer's internship on Sesame Street. Did that end up happening?
I did. Wow. You've done your homework, Sophia.
Yeah.
So I'm very impressed. Yeah. So that was kind of bonkers, because after Safe Spaces / after class, I applied for a writing fellowship with Sesame Street. And essentially I used the script from Quantum, because you had to do an application as well as your resume, and then a 10-page script that was safe for children's media. And I was like, well, Quantum's safe. I mean, it's definitely heavy for a kid to watch, but I wrote this for families. And so I submitted that, and I submitted the script as is. And I was super lucky to get the actual fellowship. And then it ended up starting literally the day after Tribeca ended. So I got to do the Sesame Writers Room Fellowship, and that was honestly like 8 of the best weeks of my life. And when I tell you that, like, I got to do the writing group with my friend Dan Schechter, and how I love that was kind of almost training for me to go into this situation, to an institution like Sesame Street, where you got to come correct. They vet their people. They're not just bringing in anyone off the street. But then I was blown away at the people that they brought in, because it wasn't just Sesame Street staff or writers that were teaching us. They brought in this amazing teacher named Susan Kim, who's been writing in children's media for over 30 years at this point. And she was our teacher daily. So like every session she would be there, and she would be kind of guiding us through. And then they would bring in guest speakers that would change every single week. And so like literally the first session was like the intro session. And I think it was the head writer of Sesame Street, Ken Scarsborough. And then the CEO of Sesame also just sat in on the session, like eating dinner and just introducing himself and just hanging out. And I'm like, is that the freaking CEO that's here right now? And he's like, yeah, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you. And just like sat and listened and talked to us, and, didn't even present. He just hung out. But then we got showrunners and creators and head writers from like a whole slew of different series that weren't even Sesame shows. So we just got this wealth of knowledge, and we were able to develop our own project and take it through all the steps that you would an actual series, and then get feedback from the people that would come in to be our speakers, while having our teacher crafting it with us, while forming the community of this actual kind of a writer's room with all my fellows. And it was unreal. I was like so overjoyed at it, and was very fortunate because I realized very early on there was a prize to win, right? And the prize is you get a development deal at Sesame, which means you get paid money to develop a concept with them, right? And when the head writer talked to us, he said something along the lines of like, they're a dime a dozen. Like, you're going to get tons of them. Like, don't worry about it. They mean nothing. You don't need an agent. I went for 10 years without an agent until finally the agents came to me. I get 85 to 90% of my jobs through my own network. I don't use agents. They don't do anything. You only use them when they come to you, and then they're just going to take your money, and that's it. You just got to have one, but you don't chase them. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But the thing that zeroed in on me really was like, development deals are a dime a dozen. And week after week one, I realized that the actual prize of this fellowship is not the development deal. The prize is like the education I'm getting and the community that I'm building. If you're competing for that, then suddenly you're doing kind of the opposite of what they're trying to teach you, which is function as a writer's room, as a unit, as a whole, as a collective. And so I was able to kind of share that with my fellows week by week, being like, honestly, I don't think the development deal matters. Like Ken said it week one, I think it's all about just like us getting better. And we luckily all were able to really take it in and form as a team and a unit, and really just create cool stuff and learn a ton. And so we finished the fellowship, and I got a whole list of contacts and people in children's media. They presented our work to them. My friend Malik won the development deal, which was like incredibly exciting because he is an amazing writer, and he was the oldest one in the fellowship. He's, I think, 54 years old. And so like, it was just one of those like, oh my God. And this guy has been an independent filmmaker for decades, and he's never gotten this kind of recognition. So it was all of a sudden incredibly excited that my friend got it. I didn't care that I didn't win. I was just happy that I had this experience and suddenly had these contacts. And I spent the next year applying for writing jobs whenever they came up. And I'll be totally honest, I didn't get them. And I interviewed with some. I thought I was going to get them, didn't get them. And I still did other side projects along the way. And like at the beginning of 2020, I was like kind of freaked out because like I didn't know where I wanted to go creatively. I knew I wanted to work in children's media, and I wanted to push forward with that. And I was nervous because it didn't look like I was going to get a job anytime soon. And since all I had was that experience with the fellowship, I didn't know if I would, but they just drilled into us. You have to be patient. And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly I was like, oh, well, I'm screwed because I host live events. So that is out. I have no income right now. What am I going to do? And I was lucky enough to get asked by my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law to babysit my niece and nephew. So I said, yes, I'll do it. Absolutely. And they're like, really? But you're like a writer, filmmaker. You want to babysit our kids? And I was like, yes, I will. I'm going to do it. I'm in. And so I was in New Jersey for 4+ months during the first lockdown. I hate to say first lockdown, but first lockdown. And I was just babysitting, and I was frustrated because I wasn't writing, and I started beating myself up. And then I took a step back, and luckily I had friends who also expressed that they weren't writing too and that they were struggling. And I realized that I could actually just live and be and take in the moment, because I knew there was inspiration happening and that I would write about it eventually, but it was okay not to write right now, and that I just had to live in the moment And so I did that, and I just fully embraced the moment that I was in. And, babysitting a 3 and a 5-year-old 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6. And then in that time, I knew that I was getting antsy and that I wanted to really get back to my life somehow. Excuse me. And I got some potential job interviews or some job leads, and I sent my resume in. And I didn't get those jobs, didn't hear back. So it had now been a full year since the fellowship ended, and I didn't have a job to show for it. And I was like totally beating myself up. The new fellows from the new wave of fellows had like a meet and greet. And I was like, I went to that Zoom meeting and was like, I'll be totally honest, I haven't gotten a job. So manage your expectations. I thought it would be fast. And I was told from the jump that it was not a fast thing. It was a long journey, and that I should just take it in stride and just keep working. And that's what I'm doing. And I was very transparent about it. And about a month after that meeting, I got an email from someone within Sesame Street asking if I wanted to apply for a position on a new animated show they had. And I immediately wrote back, yes, here's my resume, here's my writing samples, please consider me. And about a month later, I ended up coming back for 4th of July just to get a little vacay. And the head writer of the show emailed me and asked if I wanted to interview. And she did, and I did, and I got the job. And so I moved back mid-July and started on the show. So now I'm writing for an animated show that Sesame Street is producing.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. Are my stories too long-winded for you? I feel like I'm just like
I really
talking
like
at you.
I really like hearing them. I love like the storytelling aspect,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like hitting all my questions, everything that I wanted to ask.
It's because I do the interviewing so often.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I can ask my last few questions. Do you have any advice to like people my age or young filmmakers that want to do what you've done?
It's interesting because I've been asked that question quite a bit, of course, and I asked that question myself. But right now, where I am in my journey, I haven't been asked that in a little while, so I'm not exactly sure. So I'm going to fire a few things at you. Okay.
Okay.
First off, be kind. And I believe if you are kind, and you are kind to everyone from the intern and the production assistant all the way up to the executive producers, you treat everyone the same with that kindness, that is a core that will help everything work better. And unfortunately, entertainment is a bit of an ugly industry at times. And there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of things happening. And I think it's something that a lot of people forget to be. And a lot of the success that I've had is due to the kindness of others that have generously given it to me without asking for anything, and me doing the same for a whole other set of people. So I think if you're kind and you develop good relationships and you're patient, that is step one. Step two, learn, because everyone has these high expectations of themselves. But if you go in with no expectations and you just go in to learn, you'd be very surprised who is willing to share things with you. And I personally have taken probably hundreds of meetings of people that are higher level filmmaker, creator, or anything, where I'm just like, I just want to hear you talk. How did you do what you do? And break down things and really listen, because a lot of times people just want to talk about themselves, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'll share, because I know I got here through the help of others, and I'll help you just by like telling you what I know. And if you go to those meetings only looking for knowledge and not looking for, how can you make me famous? How do I get in your film? Like if you just go into, I just want to learn, man. That's it. And then suddenly you can develop a relationship and you might find the right ones who are willing to mentor you or be willing to watch something of yours and give you feedback. And if you're open to that feedback, you're really open, you're not just looking at them hoping that they're going to tell you what you want to hear. You're looking to like find a way to improve. It's going to make a big difference. And other part is I think you got to find ways to work harder than everybody else, because in this day and age, everyone has talent. Everyone has the gear, and everyone has all of the access to make something. If you're kind and you have been open to learning and educating, and you really just work your ass off and don't take no for an answer and just keep trying and trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing, you're going to hit something that's going to work. And I had a lot of failures that no one knows anything about. A ton. Some that people do. But like, it's okay to fail, because if you learn something from your failures, then it's not an actual failure. Then it's just a lesson that you learn. And that to me is how you can keep going and how you can sustain and maintain in this industry, because it's tough. It's really tough to make a living and to not only make something you believe in, but to get something that is paying you. It's incredibly difficult. But there's so many different jobs and avenues that if you are open and you've been learning and you know all of the different jobs, what you started out to do might be different than what you end up doing. So that's why I think it's important just to learn and really appreciate the teachers that you have who are willing to give you that time. Because like you'd be surprised the older you get, how hard it is to find good teachers and mentors. So when you have those opportunities, take it in, learn everything you can and share that knowledge with others and make things that you really believe in.
Well said. And your second point about like taking things in and listening, like I really like you asked me if your stories were too like long-winded, but I really enjoy listening and just like
Thank you.
hearing them and stuff. Even though like I know some people like the short, sweet answers. I really like enjoy hearing the stories and stuff. That's my favorite part of doing these interviews, getting to hear people's stories and just it's all in the experience, you know?
Yeah, it's my favorite thing is hearing people's stories, because one of the best quotes I learned in college is be kind, for every person you meet is fighting a harder battle. And that really opened my mind to want to hear other people's stories of what are you going through? And it gives you perspective, right? Because everything seems so easy on the outside, but then when you really break it down with people, if you're really listening and they get real with you, you're going to be like, whoa, that's what you went through to get there? Are you serious? It's amazing. It's beautiful.
And I actually didn't see this before, but Mr. Cole said to say something about death and disco fries and that you saw something at a festival. I know we're kind of bouncing around, but we can cut this back in.
Yeah, I did. I saw Death and Disco Fries. Which festival was that at? Hold on, think for a second, because I met CJ, well, Mr. Cullen. I met Mr. Cullen at the Northeast Film Festival, and I met him at the after party. And I was very fortunate to get to meet and hang out with the person that started the Northeast Film Festival, and then Bear introduced me to Mr. Cullen, and it was a very quick meeting. Right. He was like, oh, yeah, I do this thing called hang on to your shorts. You'll get in. I'll go get you in. You'll see. And I was just like, all right, that's cool. And I didn't really see him again until I saw Death and Disco Fries. You know what? It was at the, oh my God, this is another one of my favorite festivals that you got to check out. It's the Adirondack Film Festival. It is so cool. Truly one of my favorite festivals of all of them that I've been to. And I kept hearing about Death and Disco Fries. People like, oh my God, this film's amazing. You got to see this film. And I remembered CJ had told me he was in it. And then I saw the filmmaker win for his film for Death and Disco Fries, and I was like, oh my God, that's freaking that's the guy that I've been trying to meet and see his film that CJ told me to go see. And I saw him, and this director, Dennis Kalo, like, it's hard to describe the way he dresses, but he is an artist through and through. And the way he dresses is amazing. And he gets up there, gives his speech, comes off, and I'm like, I cannot wait to meet you, dude. I've been trying to see your film all weekend, and I keep missing it because our films were playing at the same time. And then Quantum won at the Adirondack Film Festival too. And so then I totally lucked out, and I got to see my film with his film because they put all of the winners in one block together. And so I finally got to see it, and I was blown the F away knowing CJ and then suddenly seeing him on screen acting. I was just like, I'm sorry, who are you and what do you do? Like, he was like unrecognizable to me at first. And he stole the show a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Wow. I'm sure he liked that compliment. Let's see. So what have you been up to right now? You said you're working on something with Sesame Street, but anything else?
Yeah, so I am working full time. I'm a script coordinator, and I get to write for the show as well, which is awesome. Within Sesame, I get to work on some other projects that I'm not allowed to talk about, but I have been keeping very, very busy. So like right after this interview, I'm actually going to go work on stuff like work into the night, just so I can actually enjoy the holiday and not have to do any work over the weekend. But that's been keeping me really busy. The other side project that I've been doing all throughout lockdown since April, I started streaming on Twitch. Do you know what
Yeah,
Twitch?
I was looking at your page and stuff. I was like,
Oh, nice. Well, please follow me. I would appreciate it. Honestly, streaming turned out to be one of the best things that I've found this year, because in a time when everyone's so separated and distanced, I found something where I love video games and I play video games all the time. But I also love hosting. So I realized there was this platform that I could do both on. And I started doing it in April when I was in the basement of my family and like babysitting kids, and it was kind of my escape. And since then, I started just developing it more and more and really having a great time with it. And I was luckily able to save up enough money to buy a full PC and get the setup and do the things. And it's really been a fun way to build a community and to bring people together 3 nights a week and interact with people instead of going out. And so there are times where I just get to hang out with people, and I'm not really seeing people all that often these days, because I'm working a ton. I'm trying to stay safe and trying to do my part by just not going to gatherings or anything like that. But I'm able to host my own gatherings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and just meeting a whole range of people. And the people that come in our chat and are in our community, I'm telling you, it's literally from like, I think we have a 12-year-old, like a 6th grader, all the way up to my 59-year-old stepfather named Larry. He comes in and plays Call of Duty with us on Saturdays and is like super excited to play. Really like this crazy diverse mix of people that have been coming through and are hanging out. And as it's kind of progressed, I've started to loop in my other life, right? Because streaming was kind of one world. But I'm starting to bring in my different celebrity contacts and friends. So last month we brought Sarah Natacheni, who's the voice of Ash Ketchum on Pokemon. Mm-hmm. So I brought her onto the stream to play Among Us with us. And that was nuts. And suddenly I went from like 15 viewers average to like, I think we got 100 something viewers, and someone from Rocket, the voice of Jessie from Team Rocket, she was streaming and then rated us. So suddenly it was like bonkers. And so then like next month we're bringing on Samantha Strelitz, who is the voice, one of the voices from Red Dead Redemption. And so I'm going to just start bringing in my friends who are doing really cool things, and we'll talk I'll interview them just like you're interviewing me, and then we'll play video games together. Yeah, but shameless plug. Any of the students or friends or anybody who might be on Twitch, please give me a follow, because one, I would love to meet you and talk to you and hang out with you. But you're also just, I want cool people and filmmakers and people like you just hanging out. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Do you have any other, like your website or other social medias that you want to plug?
I would say my Instagram, RyWillFilm, and my Twitch, which is just RyWill. Those are really it. I don't do the TikToks. I like looking at TikToks, but I don't make them.
Yeah, you should. You could post little clips of your films, and people could, you know.
Give me an idea and tell me, because I'm lost on TikTok. I can make long films, but those short 1 minute TikToks is a whole different world.
You have to make like a 60-second trailer of it, and then you'll get the clicks, and you never know, it could go viral and it can get like millions of hits.
Okay. I'll think about it.
Yeah, it's a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah, that's all the questions that I have. So is there anything else you would like to say just to finish it out?
That's a good question.
Your last impressions?
We're living through a really crazy time right now. And I don't think you or your teachers are getting any of the credit that you deserve. And I'm talking to all of the students, anyone who might watch this. I want you to know that I feel for you, and I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how tough it is on your end, but I believe in you. And I genuinely believe you are the generation that is going to change this world for the better. So even though this might be the hardest time that you've been through and the most confusing and the most distant from the normal things that you know, I'm going to encourage you to be like water and be ready to adapt and flow and change at any point in time, because things only get more difficult as life goes on. But if you can stay like water and be ready to change and adapt, that is the way that you can succeed. If you're stuck in the past and trying to go back to the past, you're going to get left behind. And so all of these crazy ideas that you have that adults don't necessarily understand or think are good, just know your time will come. And I really appreciate how well you all are dealing with this and taking it in. So just be kind to each other and try and support and lift up everyone else, because everyone is struggling to some extent. And I think the best way for us to move forward as a human race is together. So connect with your people, connect with your friends, be kind to every person you can be. And I'm going to just rely on you to make this world a better place.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Sophia. I appreciate it.